Back here with you live. If you have any questions at all, we're standing by to answer them right now. 321-282-1055. As we are every week, joined by our good friend Rajan Joshi. Rajan, how are you, sir?
Doing good, thank you.
Fascinated by this question because I'm sure this is something that comes up at your criminal defense law firm often. We have people who are in high school, all right, and some are older than others. You might have a senior who's 19 who falls in love with a sophomore who is 16 or who is 15. What does Florida criminal law say about someone who is over the age of 18 engaging in sexual activity with someone who's at the same school, but they happen to be under 18?
Well, Florida law is a little bit complicated in this area because a lot of people think that the age of consent is 18. And for the most part, that is true, but there is kind of an exception, like someone who's 16 or 17, if they have a relationship, even a sexual relationship with anyone under 24, if it's consensual, it's not a crime. So in your situation, the 19-year-old dating the 16-year-old is legal.
Okay.
The 15-year-old, now that person's looking at some serious consequences, kind of rape convictions and even, being a sexual offender.
Is that right?
Yeah.
What is the difference between sexual offender and sexual predator?
Sexual predator is a little bit more, both of them are horrible designations, and people who have these designations, basically, their lives are over. But there's more stringent requirements on the sexual predator aspect than there is on the offender. Both are very similar. I mean, and it just depends on the type of crime. Certain crimes, characterize the person as a sexual predator, and the supervision and monitoring is going to be a lot more strict on that.
Let's take you through a hypothetical here.
Okay.
Let's say I'm a little bit older, okay? I'm now out of college. I'm 28 years old. I'm down at the local club downtown, and this girl walks over and she says, I'm 18. Or she says, I'm 19. And I'm like, oh, cool. I buy her a couple of drinks because she got in the club, no problem. One thing leads to another. We go home and sexual activity. I'm just trying to use the nicest words I can, okay? They have sex. And turns out she was only 17 when that happened. She told me she was 19. She was only 17. What happens to me?
In Florida, ignorance of the person's age is no defense.
Wow.
She can show you a fake ID. She could be in college. She could look like she's 26. But if she's under the age and you're over the age and you have sex, even if you don't know it, you're looking at liability as, with a sexual conviction and being a sex offender, which, in those type of situations, it's kind of unfair.
I mean, people are looking a little bit older these days. I mean, it is a little bit scary, and the fact that they could show you a fake ID and the liability is still on me it makes me a little bit nervous. If you think I'm not going to the clubs or anything, I'm not 28, as anyone at home knows, but it makes me concerned for someone who is around that age group, and people are looking older these days. Now, how much weight does the state put on the fact that, okay, this victim did show him a fake ID. She did say she was of age. Does that change how they prosecute the case at all?
It depends on how the attorney, articulates it.
Yeah.
In some situations, the state may end up, if you do a good job and you present the case as well, I've had situations where they then agree to knock the case down to a misdemeanor, contributing to the delinquency of a minor.
Really?
But in those type of cases, usually my client is, a really good person, made a mistake, had a relationship with someone who lied to them, and sometimes I even have text messages or emails where they're talking about doing adult things,
right?
And so that makes a difference. Other times, it's strict liability. There's no defense. If they can prove you had sex with someone that you shouldn't have because of the age, the ramifications can be very severe.
Well, I think this is one of those situations as well where if you're charged with a crime like this is serious stuff. You're facing significant jail and/or prison time. What is the state going to seek? How much time are they going to try to lock me away?
It depends on the evidence of the case. A lot of times what the state does is they put them on sexual offender probation when it's a he said, she said. And these conditions are very stringent. I mean, even, the most law-abiding citizen has a hard time, going past these conditions, and they wait for them to mess up, and then they get them. Other times they just, ask for prison or ask for, and the person is going to be designated a sex offender. So in certain cases, it is imperative to defend them, as rigorously as possible. Now, I am in no way, in no way behind any type of rape case or any type of violence against women. But there are certain situations where, people are wrongfully accused.
Yeah, and we see it all the time too. And let's be very, very clear. This is one of those situations where if you're charged with some sort of sex crime or someone in your family is, it's not always true, but this is maybe the most important time. Investing in a great criminal defense lawyer is going to be one of the most important investments of your life. You can ask questions right now at 321-282-1055. I will connect you with Rajan right now if you want to talk offline, which we certainly understand. He'll call you back right after the show. But it leads me to another question too, and there was a picture out, I think he was with Los Angeles, and he was accused of being rough in the bedroom with someone, and he said no, that she wanted it rough. Mm-hmm. She wanted to get hit or whatever, and she said no, I didn't ask for that. That's a he said she said type of thing, but I don't think they actually charged him with anything, but there's got to be a line there. And I mean, how does the state decide what to charge people with in that situation?
A lot of times it depends on the investigation the police do. When the police are going to do an investigation, they should do a thorough investigation. And what they should do is when the victim comes to them is they should have the victim do what's called a controlled phone call, in which they reach out to the defendant, not let them know that they've gone to the police and say, hey, you did this to me, and get a reaction. Yeah. And if the guy says, no, don't go to the police, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that, then they've got that confession right there. Or they should then confront the person and get their side of the story and see how the person reacts and how they describe what happened. Because yes, a lot of these are he said, she said, and unfortunately, innocent people do get convicted. I've been in trial where I had a lady up there accusing my client. He said it was consensual. They had a former relationship, but she gave so many inconsistent stories, and by the time I was done with her, I got her on the stand. I pointed at her. I said, "You're lying," and she said, "Yes." It took 6 minutes for the jury to exonerate my client.
It's very easy for us to sit here and say, "Of course we don't support sex crimes or sexual assault. You don't support it.
No,
I don't support it either."
Absolutely not.
But we have seen instances where things actually didn't happen, and there's more of sort of a gray line too. When does consent end?
Consent ends when the person makes it obvious they don't want to engage. I mean, it can be a push, it can be a no, and at that point, the other person should respect the boundaries that the person lays. If they don't respect the boundaries and they continue to push their way onto the female or whichever, then that's where it crosses the line. I mean, in Florida, in order to have sex, it's got to be both mutual consent and not, no ambiguity as to what the other person's saying.
Have you ever seen a situation where it's husband and wife, been together 13 years, obviously been intimate together for 13 years, and then some point one of them ended that consent? Have you ever seen that between husband and wife?
Absolutely, absolutely. And usually when these allegations do come up, unfortunately, there's a house at stake, and there's a lot of other issues going on, and then there's an allegation. And one thing that does happen in these type of cases is, the victim is afraid to come forward a lot of times. And a lot of times, they hold back on it, and they're afraid to come forward, or they're embarrassed, or they're ashamed of it. And when they do come forward, luckily, the police, for the most part, and thankfully, don't just ignore it. They do listen to the person and do an investigation.
We've seen a lot of this, really a proliferation of teachers, coaches over the last decade or two being charged with sex crimes or reaching out on Snapchat to the students. Is there anything that's worse about a teacher doing it versus a regular person? Is there anything that protects our students more?
Well, the teacher is given a position of trust with children, and so when, and it's also like if it's in a family setting, then the crimes are a little bit at that point increased, and the penalties increased because it's in a familial setting. So the person is in an environment where they should be safe. And with teachers, a lot of times the prosecutors take it a little bit more serious because of the aspect that there's an entitlement of trust.
Yeah. What about email or any sort of electronic communication? So no one was touched, okay? We weren't even in the same house, but an adult was sending explicit things to a minor. How does the law look at that?
That's very serious, especially if there's any type of solicitation and using the computer. Yeah. It can be a state or federal offense when they try and solicit sex from a minor using a computer. In federal court, it's a 10-year minimum sentence.
Wow.
And yeah, those carry prison. And a lot of times the type of cases are, it's an undercover detective posing as a minor.
Yeah.
And, you know, someone bites at the bait and they show up and, you know, they're in a world of trouble.
That's right. Rajan Joshi, always killing it on this show, buddy. We're lucky to have you. The people of Central Florida are lucky to have you. Thanks as always for being here.
Thank you so much.
Welcome back. You got it. If you've been charged with any type of crime, you have to call Rajan today, 321-282-1055. Literally, as soon as we step off of this stage, he will call you back to answer your legal questions. Quick break. Michaela, are you ready? I am. All right. One last quick break, or maybe one more after. I don't know. I'm lost
Something.
now. We might have two. We might have one. I don't know. But Behind the Law will continue.